Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Thanks for being with us. Tonight is part 2 of our special interview with President Donald Trump last night. I believe you'll agree was really compelling. He's got a new book out called Save America. You can get it at 45books.com, 45books.com. Beautiful pictures in the book, his remarkable comments. Some of them are hilarious in the book, and I use that as a springboard to conduct this interview. I want you to notice something. He does the interview without notes. He doesn't have a running mate sitting next to him. He answers every question and then some. Big difference between him and his opponent. Go. I'm looking for a photo of you in the car.
Yeah.
Which is seared in my head. This photo right here.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, that was a photo that was taken on the ground. It's an amazing photo.
It's right through the window.
I have 7 Secret Service people on top of me, because by that time I had gone down, and this was a photographer that was taking pictures, and I think realized when he was developing them, I said, look what we have here. So there was a little gap in the floor where you're able to see. So it wasn't like, oh, gee, what a nice picture this would be.
What was going through your head right there?
Amazing, really amazing. I felt very clear-headed. I knew I got hit in the ear. I felt I was 100% okay. Secret Service was very brave. They jumped, they were on me very quickly, seconds. I was down, but they were on top of me, and bullets were flying right over me. I heard them. I didn't know you could hear a bullet. You hear it just like a whiz sound. And then, by the way, a Secret Service sniper was amazing, because didn't know anything, didn't know there was a problem, heard the sound of the gun, saw the smoke, and within less than 5 seconds, he shot him from a very big distance, much further. He was on the opposite side of the podium. 1 bullet. Pretty amazing, right? 1 bullet. And that's without knowledge. Now, obviously, somebody should have been on top of that roof. And there were some problems, but I have to tell you, Secret Service, they were on top of me, and bullets were flying over us. And there wasn't one of them that said, oh, gee, I'm not doing that. And even the people, as you know, we lost one great person, Corey, the firefighter, who was fantastic. And we had 2 people that we thought were going to die, and they ended up living, and they're going to be good, I hope. Perfect. We raised a lot of money for them, for the family of Corey. You know, it was very nice. A friend of mine said, I'd like to give Corey, the firefighter, a check. I said, good. He said, would you give it? Yeah. And he handed me a check for $1 million. And so I gave it to Corey's beautiful family, wife, daughters. And he, you know, the daughters were there, and he wanted to protect them. He got over and he got hit. He got hit hard, pretty much instantaneously over.
Were you able to see him or not really? You were
moved out. Well, they were moving me, I guess, in a different direction. But he was hit hard.
Bad shape.
He was really hit hard. I think it was probably instantaneous. We had a man from the National Guard who was sitting maybe 15 seats away. He ran to Corey, and he gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I mean, amazing. Some of the things that you hear here, it's amazing. The other thing is the crowd people, the people that study crowd control, et cetera, they said when a bullet goes off, everyone stampedes always. Nobody stampedes. They saw I was in trouble. It's, you know, make America great again. We had a crowd. It's so big, tens of thousands of people, as far as the eye could see. And at first, you know, when you have that crowd and you're speaking it for you sort of, something hit you hard, but you don't know if you want to go down. I think that, you know, my movement was quick because I heard people screaming, it's bullets, go down, go down, go down. So I think, pretty sure, because I couldn't have done it as easily as it looked on the tape. You know, I must have been hearing people say that. But 2 of the people were hit and had this a guy not been taken out very quickly, you would have had, because it was nothing but people. There was no ground, basically. There was just nothing but people. So the bullets. In fact, when I first was starting to get up, the first thing I said is how many people were killed, because there was no ground. It was just wall. You've seen rallies. It was wall-to-wall people. But we then did a GoFundMe for them and raised millions of dollars. And we're very proud of that, very proud of that. So, and the two people were very thankful, and the family was very thankful. But I know for a fact they'd rather have Corey back than all those millions. But that was a rough time. The hospital was amazing. The doctors were amazing. You know, the doctors saved two people that most people thought couldn't be saved. And these were local doctors in Pennsylvania, Butler area, and they were phenomenal doctors. They saved two people that, in theory, nobody thought could be saved. You know, we have a lot of talent in this country.
You've been a man of faith. You go to church. You believe in God. Has this further your belief, your commitment, and obviously God, in addition to that chart, saved your life. He has a purpose for you. Do you think about these things?
Well, I think you believe more because when you speak to experts, like my sons who are shooting experts, but when you speak to experts, they said there was no chance that he could have missed from that distance. I think he was hurried. I think he was rushed because people were starting to say, like, you know, there's a guy up there with a gun. And I think he was probably rushed.
This is what drives people crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Right now, me too. It's a guy up there with a gun.
I know.
The hell, there's a guy up there with a gun.
By the time they started saying it, it was a little bit on the late side. And luckily he was taken out quickly. But I'll tell you, if he wasn't, it would have been like in Las Vegas, that horrible attack in Las Vegas with the crazy man up in the building shooting down into the crowds. And that's what you would have had here. These crowds were bigger. And you would have had a lot of people. It was bad having three, and especially losing one. But no, I think you think, like, if you believed in God, you believe in God more. And somebody said, like, why? And I'd like to think that God thinks that I'm going to straighten out our country. Our country is so sick, and it's so broken. Our country is just broken. And maybe that was the reason. I don't know. I don't know. A lot of people have said that.
Did you get a call or a note? I'm just curious. From Kamala Harris?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
And we know now that shortly after that.
I did get one from Biden.
From Biden, yeah. We know that shortly after that, the Department of Justice was still trying to get you. They impaneled a secret grand jury in Washington, D.C., maybe within days of the assassination attempt, to try and breathe life back into the case that essentially the Supreme Court killed with their immunity decision.
That I thought we won.
Which you did win.
Which we did win.
You did. And so they come back. Jack Smith cannot file that without the approval of the Attorney General of the United States. That brief wasn't written by Jack Smith. It was written by, I know the Department of Justice. I worked there under Ed Meese, who was one of the ones that filed a brief in Florida and said, wait a minute, he's unconstitutional.
That's right.
Attorney General Mukasey filed it, and honestly, my legal group filed one too. Now that said.
And great lawyers, and if that's true there, it's true in Washington, D.C. also. He's not allowed to do it.
Well, that's, I assume, one of the motions your lawyer will file.
True.
Now that said, this isn't intended to get a result before the election.
That's right.
This is intended to smear you and to keep smearing you and to keep wasting your money and your campaign money and to keep using American taxpayer dollars. You know, Mr. President, the President of the United States or the wannabe President of the United States have the power to tell the Attorney General to knock it off. You've made the point that you did not want Hillary Clinton indicted. If she'd been indicted, you probably would have said, knock it off. The president is the executive branch, not the Attorney General. And yet they go ahead and do this in the middle, not even in the middle of election. Pennsylvania, they start voting in a couple of weeks and so forth and so on. I mean, this election interference never ends, does it?
Well, this is the worst case of election interference that anyone's ever seen, certainly in our country. They do this in third world countries. They have some of it in South America. They don't do it a lot, believe it or not, but they do it. They do it in banana republics. But now this is the United States. When it came to Hillary, you remember, they subpoenaed her stuff, and she bleach bit. That's where it's basically acid, everything. Broke the phones, broke the computer, broke everything. I mean, it was so terrible. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to do this? Do I want to put the wife of the President of the United States and Secretary of State, by the way, do I want to put her in prison? And I'm trying to unify a country that really was broken badly. If you look at, what was going on with Obama when I took this over, this country had tremendous hatred, anxiety, a lot of hatred. And do I want to put the wife of a president of the United States in prison? I didn't want to do that. And then when I get out, it's like, it's amazing, actually. It's amazing. And it's such a bad precedent because people are going to think about it differently. They're going to think about it differently, and it's very sad, actually. But you know the good news? It's so crazy that my poll numbers go up. Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it, you get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted, your poll numbers go down. But it's such nonsense. They got to the DA, they put people in the DA's office, they put people in the Attorney General of New York's office. Fani Willis in Atlanta met with them, and her boyfriend met with them for days. This was all coming out of the Department of Justice in order to get their political opponent, me. Think of it. Fani Willis came up with this crazy scheme, and a lot of people were hurt by it too. Very good people, patriots, because it was many people were indicted. But they did this to try and get me. And then they say to people, listen, we'll let you off if you say bad things about Trump. If you say bad things about Trump, we're going to let you off. This was all done by the Department of Justice. I'm surprised at Merrick Garland because I thought I knew he was very liberal. There were those that said, because when I came in, I put 3 Supreme Court justices in. And they've been very brave, actually, in many ways. But they're very, highly thought of people. But there were some people that wanted me to put him in when I first came in. And they thought that could unify the country. And I had a decision to make. And I didn't know if it would be accepted or, people would say, what's he doing? Why is he doing it? And then I said, I wonder if they'd do it. And you know that if they had that option, which is in the conservative vein, they wouldn't do it. When Schumer was screaming on the stairs of the U.S. Supreme Court, I'm going to get you, Kavanaugh, I'm going to get you, Gorsuch, we're going to hit you. I said, can you believe it? And I actually told our people, I don't think they denied, I think you should do something about it because that's like a mobster. And he wasn't shielded. When you're in the halls of Congress, you're shielded. You can say anything, which is maybe crazy, maybe not. But he wasn't shielded at all. And they said, sure, we don't have a case. We don't have a case. But I thought it was a terrible thing when he was, if you remember that. I thought it was terrible that the Supreme Court, to this day, their houses aren't properly protected. They were supposed to have great protection. Their houses weren't properly protected. And things are happening that are so crazy. I think there's no human being that was ever treated worse in Congress than Justice Kavanaugh.
And Harris led the battle.
That's right. Oh, she was vicious. Oh, she was the most vicious. She was going after them, just like with Mike Pence, where she said, "You're interrupting me. I want to talk." And that's why, look, ABC is probably the worst in terms of fairness. George Flopadopoulos, the people they have there are just terrible. Jonathan Karl. But that's the only one she'll go to. Now, the other one is the head of ABC is her best friend and her husband's best friend, too. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to debate? I'd like to debate. I mean, I guess I won a lot of debates because otherwise I wouldn't have been president. I had a lot of debates initially, and then I had quite a few. And the last one with Joe Biden, I think I did a very good job. And maybe I did too good a job. But he was shielded and sheltered from, here's a man that's in charge of nuclear warfare and stuff, and I don't think he should have been there. But that was a debate, and it was their idea. They wanted to do it. I said, it's early, but I'll do it if you want. What do you want to do? And they gave me CNN, they gave me Jake Tapper, and they gave me Dana Bash, who traditionally you would never do it. You'd never do it with them because they're Trump haters at the highest level, and CNN is a Trump hater. Basically, they're liberals. I don't like to use the word progressive. It's too pretty a word. It's such a pretty word. They're progressive. Progressive means you think into the future. They're actually thinking to 3,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. These people, they're not progressive, but they're liberal. And I took it because that was the only way you're going to get a debate. I was surprised they did debate it. I don't think they actually wanted me to take it. I thought they were going to say, he wouldn't take it, and therefore Biden doesn't have to debate. But I agreed to all these things that I normally wouldn't agree to. Now they have Kamala, who they say has many deficiencies, but she's a nasty person. The way she treated Mike Pence was horrible. The way she treats people is horrible. But the way she treated Justice Kavanaugh during that hearing, in the history of Congress, nobody's been treated that way.
By the way, you have a picture of her in the book. It's a fantastic book, 45books.com. The things that the president are talking about pictorially are in the book, and much, much, much more than that. And, Kamala Harris, remember all the stories about how she berates her staff and uses the F word, and she's lost 92% of her staff as vice president? We don't hear those stories anymore.
No, they don't want to hear them. They don't want to hear them. The press is a big problem, the press. And you don't understand why. I fixed our military. I created a great border. I built hundreds of miles of wall. All these. We had a great economy. We were going with school choice. We were doing a lot of things that were so great. And you don't know why they hate these things. Common sense, I like to say the Republican Party's been the party of common sense. Much of it is common sense. We don't want men playing in women's sports. Look at the swimming. Young ladies that have been swimming against each other for years, and the cream of the crop, right? And then they look, and there's somebody to their right that's a giant, and he goes by them at levels that nobody's ever seen before.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.